The Leagues Cup came to an end in the round of 16 for Inter Miami, but it wasn't all bad. Some good performances and a look ahead to when MLS resumes, all this week on the Inter Miami Weekly Show. Welcome back to Chase Stadium alongside the Arsenal great Kieran Gibbs. I'm Joe Malfa. Kieran, as I mentioned, Leagues Cup comes to an end in that round of 16, but there were some good performances mixed within, whether it was the win in group play, whether it was going toe-to-toe with Tigres in group play, beating Toronto, a thriller against Columbus. There was a lot to take out of that tournament for Inter Miami.
Oh, definitely. Listen, they'll be disappointed, not to go through and continue their defence of the cup. But I think football can be a cruel game sometimes. I think, they definitely had control, especially at that last game, and they almost looked too in control, and they were cruising at times, and they made it look easy. But any time you can switch off, you can get punished, and Columbus are a good side. I don't think they deserve to be on the losing side, Miami, but that's the way it goes sometimes. There were a lot of positives to take from the tournament, though. I think the emergence of Rojas, again, who continues to perform at a high level for Miami. Yannick Bray, I think he's really become a staple for the club, which is amazing to see for him at such a young age and how far he's come in such a quick space of time. And, even the performance of Luis Suarez, I thought it was excellent. He held up the ball. He was the target man for Miami. He helped them out of trouble many times and continues to perform at a high level as well.
Well, we've got a lot of goals to show you from these two games between Toronto and Columbus. 12 goals combined between those two games. So let's dive right into the highlights. We've got a long way to go here, and the scoring started early in that match against Toronto. This, again, was the 4-3 victory in that round of 32, and we only had to wait 3 minutes for Matias Rojas to get on the board at the beginning.
Yeah, and they just started flying out of the blocks, Miami, and really Toronto couldn't cope. It was a great performance in the opening 10 minutes from Miami, and after a few minutes you see here Rojas with such a beautiful technique, the way he takes his first touch and connects with the ball. It's a brilliant goal, and he really started this game on fire. And
you'll notice the pass on that goal from Jordi Alba. We're going to say that a few more times in this game because he set a record for Leagues Cup. He had 4 assists in this game. Here comes his second on the goal for Diego Gomez. Yeah, and he's just so accurate with his passing that the chances that he can create for the team are they're just brilliant for Miami as an outlet. He's been excellent all season, and he leaves Toronto with no chance to adjust. They battle back. Insigne pulls it back on the penalty to 2-1. This was maybe the most eventful first 30 minutes of any match you're going to watch in any league this year. We get a third goal for Inter Miami. 4 goals total inside of 20 minutes. This deft chip from Luis Suarez makes it 3-1 on the ball in from Alba. And then 8 minutes later is when the red card would come for David Martinez. So in the first 30 minutes of this game, you had 3 goals for Inter Miami, 1 goal for Toronto, a red card for Martinez. There could have been plenty more goals where that came from. It was a thrilling start to this match. And then from there, Kieran, that's where the resolve sets in because they had to go over an hour down a man defending this lead. And oh, by the way, another penalty for Insigne just a few minutes after that. So now you're looking at a 3-2 scoreline, over 45 minutes to go down a man, but they somehow persevere and find a way.
Yeah, and listen, for all of the individual errors that were made and they got punished for, there was still a loads of positives to take from Miami's performance, which was what was probably so strange about it. If you remove the individual errors, you're looking at a really comfortable performance from Miami. I mean, what a goal that was from Rojas there, and another beautiful layoff from Jordi Alba. But yeah, the team continued to play well, and they looked flowing even with a man down. It was amazing to see, really, to put in that kind of performance with a man less is not an easy thing to do. And at this point, they really looked like, they were going to put a real staple on this tournament and go far.
It's another one of those days, and we've seen it a few times this year already where the club goes down a man and still finds a way. It's a couple of times now as you go back through the earlier months in May and June, and the one that sticks out was when they were on the road against Vancouver, and Avilés picked up that red card, but they still found a way. They've always been able to do that, even down a man. There's just something that you can't put your finger on with this team. Aside from the talent, there's a heart, there's a perseverance, a resilience, and it's just the way that Tata manages them. They have that little bit extra when they're called upon.
Yeah, when it happens with teams sometimes that, you know, they get their stroke of luck and they come back into a game and they do it 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden it becomes part of their identity almost. If you look at Man United back in the 90s and early 2000s, they were renowned for, you know, that never giving up and you know, scoring last-minute goals and always finding a way. There's a skill to that. There's an art to that, and I think the boys have learnt that just from playing this season and going through the ups and the downs and growing as a team. They've got that belief in each other that they're always going to find a way, and that's an amazing ingredient to have as a team if you want to go and win something. So, you know, long may that continue. Obviously, they fell short the other night, but still many positives to take.
It's funny you mentioned that Fergie time, as everybody called it, with Alex Ferguson and Manchester United. On the broadcast of the Columbus match the other night, Taylor Twellman on the Apple TV broadcast referred to it now as Tata time. So it's actually got that moniker to it, and it's becoming a thing. And we'll show you that Columbus game now, because once we got into quote-unquote Tata time, they almost did it again. There were opportunities late in this one. They race out to that 2-0 lead. From there, they let Columbus back in. But even still, to your point, at the end, they very much had a chance to still find a way to send it to penalties. And it's that name again. You mentioned Matias Rojas really showed out in Leagues Cup. He opens it with a goal here.
Yes, and you have to give most of the credit to Gomez, who is another name who's just been fantastic. I love the way he, you know, dogs this bit of play out and manages to find Rojas. That the perseverance and attitude to win the ball and help your team get ahead was brilliant.
And then from that point on, it seemed like the second goal was only a matter of time. It almost came here in the 51st minute. It would come in the 62nd when Suarez found Gomez.
Yeah, and he was doing this the whole night, Suarez. His one-touch layoffs, his support play for the team, you know, when they were having a moment, you know, under it a little bit, he would always dig them out with a great bit of hold-up play, and it just gave the team some breathing space. And this is just a wonderful 1-2. The defenders left for dead, really, and Gomez slots it away.
And this is where Inter Miami, and we'll talk about it once we get out of the highlights, learned what I think is an important lesson going forward. This Columbus team just won MLS Cup last year. They made it to the CONCACAF Champions Cup final. They're among the favorites with Inter Miami to win the MLS Cup this year. And when they get going, you see that there, that miss, that's the one that I want to come back to. When Columbus gets going, it's an avalanche. They score in the 67th. Inter Miami 1 minute later could have made it a 3-goal lead again, but 1 minute after that, it's 2-2. So when you're against Columbus, you have to make sure you punish them. 80th minute, the avalanche continues.
Yeah, and listen, 2-0 can be a dangerous scoreline, and I mentioned at the beginning that at times, especially in the first half, they looked alarmingly comfortable, and you know, sometimes that's a dangerous place to be, because you can be a little bit complacent. I don't think that they were complacent in this game. I think more so the Toronto game, you know, led to them coming back into things. This game I felt was more, in my opinion, I think it was more of a tactical thing. I think because they're not used to playing with 5 at the back, right, and they went 5 at the back to match up with Columbus, which I agree with. I think that you have to do that. I think that just in the latter stages of the game, we sat deep a lot, and it's hard to keep a back 5 in line because you have an extra body there. There's always a chance that one of them drops a little bit further, and it just allows that little bit more space for Columbus to be dangerous. And I think that's just a learning curve of you know, Tata and the boys to take on themselves for the rest of the season. You may have to go to that formation again at some point, and it's like, what do you learn from this that you can put in the league and those performances? I think that apart from that, they looked pretty comfortable, yep, which was the disappointing thing to see, I think, from going out of the Leagues Cup, because apart from that, they look a really good side. And
that again continues to be part of the larger conversation that when they win, they look very good. When they lose, they still look very good, and that's something that you can hang your hat on, that even in losses, most of the time it feels like they're the better team. And you mentioned it earlier, it's an individual lapse here or there. So there's still so many positives to take from it as you think now, looking back to the league, refocusing on the league where you're in first place, you're in the Supporters' Shield lead, not just the Eastern Conference lead. You're in a good spot. It's again hard to complain with the spot that you're in, and you know what needs to be corrected going forward, and you know who your toughest tests are in Columbus and Cincinnati. There's nothing that's unknown right now to the group, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think, if we look at the performances over the spectrum of the season, more often than not, they've had to grow into games, and they've gotten more comfortable as the games have gone on. Whereas in the last couple of games, they've had complete control from very early, and then they've let it slip away. So I think that's an important thing to take note for Tata, because it's, what do you prefer? Do you prefer to get that early lead, get that cushion, and then try and sit back and defend, or do they have that slow start and they have to chase the game? So I think getting that balance right will be important for the rest of this season.
Well, it's time to start looking to the rest of the season. The silver lining, maybe, as far as you wanted to go in Leagues Cup, silver lining is you get a little time off now. And time off has been very hard to come by this year for Inter Miami between Champions Cup and MLS play and now Leagues Cup. So from the time that match was lost to the time they take the field next against Cincinnati, it's almost a full 2 weeks, and that's something that's probably much needed.
Yeah, and it's come at a perfect time, really, hasn't it? Because Cincinnati's such a big game with the league standings at the moment, so it will be good for them to have that rest and switch off, shake off that cup upset, and get back to business in the league.
It wasn't the ending to Leagues Cups that we were hoping for, trying to defend and lift that trophy once again, but plenty of positives to take away, and a little time to rest now before next week we dive into Cincinnati and get back to the swing of MLS play. Happy to have had you all tournament long here in Leagues Cup on the Inter Miami Weekly Show on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe, because we've still got a long way to go, hopefully culminating in MLS Cup trophy lift on December 7th.